And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
I'm so glad you're here because you can bring great clarity. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sephardic Jews and how they were scattered because they went west?
I sure can.
Because the reason why I want to is because a lot of them, and a lot of people don't know this, are in the Caribbean.
They are.
In the islands.
And you're one of them. I know that.
I'm one of them.
I know that.
Because, you know, a lot of folk don't know that those roots are there. One of the first batches of slaves that came to Jamaica, they were the Sephardic Jews. It's documented.
And they're all over the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and even the South Central United States.
Wow.
And DNA testing is a factor in all this now.
Most Egyptologists and anthropologists, archaeologists of the Eurocentric persuasion will say that Egypt is in Africa. They had to concede that, but then they still draw the line by saying that they weren't Africans like that. In other words, they weren't dark-skinned people. And of course, this is all part of the Great Deception. And the reality is that if they give up Egypt, ancient Kemet, if they give that up and say that that was a part of Black Africa, then they will also have to give up Israel. And that's why they draw the line at Egypt, because if they give up Egypt, they've got to give up Israel.
Now, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you where Israel sits on the African tectonic plate, which means that Israel is northeast Africa. Now, when we look at this map, this is the Sinai. Okay? This is the Red Sea. This is Egypt. This is the Sinai. This is Israel. All right, this is Saudi Arabia over here. Now, if you see this in Hebrew, it says Haluach Afrikani, the African plate. Here it is right here. Israel is sitting right here. Israel is sitting on the Haluach Afrikani, which means that Israel is northeast Africa.
Without question, we are in northeast Africa. We are landlocked to Egypt, with the exception of the Suez Canal, which was a man-made ditch, a boundary now between, in fact, it's not even really a boundary anymore since Egypt has reclaimed the Sinai Peninsula. But nevertheless, even those of us who are Pan-Africanists in our thinking and Afrocentric, we forget and we leave off that portion of northeast Africa and don't want to claim anything beyond that.
Europeans classified this area as a Middle East, you know, and then since this the Middle East, the other question, where the Middle West, where the Middle North, and where the Middle South? They don't have no geographical terms like that.
Want to say peace and blessings, everyone. Want to say shalom block, mash paka. Hope all is well with you, family. I hope and pray that you guys had a blessed Shabbat. We had a great Shabbat. And so what we're going to do tonight, right? I touched on it earlier in our Shabbat. I'm going to do the lesson, right? This is a message, and I'm going to have to break this up into two parts. But I'm going to do the lesson that I did for 3 years. I preached and taught the same message for 3 years, right? The system to destroy our hope, active hostility, right? I taught that lesson for 3 years, literally. And I first started teaching the lesson like 2014, right? It's when I put the presentation together. So what this lesson is going to do, the goal in this lesson is what I use is to really reinforce heritage according to the scriptures. So I'm going to lay out the foundation for you guys. And I encourage you guys to go back over the video, take down the notes, but I'm going to show you how to articulate our identity to your loved ones, articulate our identity to even some of you guys that may still be in the church, how to bring up this discussion, how to enter the discussion among the leadership there, how to really ask the right questions, because we as a people, starting with these belief systems such as Christianity, these religious systems, Catholicism, they've taught us that identity doesn't matter, but yet they're teaching an identity, right? They'll tell you that culture doesn't matter, but then they'll tell you that Christianity is not a religion, it's a culture, right? It's a lifestyle, right? So this lesson, and I really did a number of other lessons that branched off of this, called another lesson called Mapping It Out, still dealing with active hostility, right? And there I literally walked through how Israel became a divided kingdom well before they physically became divided. I think I did part 1 on here. I encourage you guys to go back and look at that lesson 3 weeks ago. No, not 3 weeks ago. I think I did it about 2 months ago. But look for that lesson. So again, this here is to show you how to walk your relatives through, but also to give you a better understanding of how to walk through and really disseminate the information and know exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to show you how to use sources, how to use secondary sources or secular sources. I want to put it that way, secular sources, to help confirm the scriptures, right? And that's the key. We have to start learning how to use secondary sources to confirm scripture, because that's actually what science is supposed to do: confirm, not contradict. But anyway, so we're going to do that tonight. I know this is a late night playbook. I know I decided to do it at the spare of the moment. I just was watching the game, saw the Lakers lose to Golden State. And so I was just thinking about it. I was like, you know what, let me do this lesson, because with the Shabbat lesson, it's, it's still there, but it's, if you have the link, you could watch it. But I really wanted to do this lesson so that way you could actually see what I had up on the screen. And again, you can really start mapping it out. So I'm going to cover a lot of things in this lesson. Have your notepads ready, and let's go ahead and get started. But before we get started, I want to just go through the chat. I know I haven't done this in a little while, but I'm going to go ahead and go through the chat and give some shout outs here. I want to say shalom to Stay on Fire Ministry. I hope all is well with you, and reach out to me offline. I'll check my email. I know you're going to reach out to me offline, but send me a message if you haven't. Send a message again, and that way we could connect offline. Really appreciate you. Who else do we have here? Dwayne, want to say shalom to you. Devorah Cotton, want to say shalom to you. Shirley Greer, shalom to you. Peace and blessings. Let's see here. Queen Nava, want to say shalom to you. Jimmy Gilliam, want to say peace and blessings to you. All praises to the Most High. Absolutely. Jason Phillip Macaulay, want to say peace and blessings to you as well. Want to say Calvin Andrus, want to say peace and blessings to you. Yah's grace. That's right. We need Yah's grace at all times. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Israelite wife. I want to say peace and blessings to you, Desiree. Peace and blessings to you. Second Exodus. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Want to also say shalom to Dr. Sean, Dr. Carr. Really appreciate you guys. And guys, if you haven't subscribed to his channel, subscribe to his channel. Got some awesome content there. And Doctor, I'll drop the link inside the comment section. If you ever want to jump in, feel free to do so. If you want to just interject any thoughts that that may be triggered in this lesson, feel free to do so. And I'll drop the link inside the comment section if you want to share any comments or any thoughts that may be triggered in this lesson. So really appreciate all that you do. And who else do we have here? And again, family, subscribe to his channel. Up next, want to say shalom to you as well. Who else do we have here? Soulfully sowing seeds. I want to say Shabbat shalom to you. I hope you had a great Shabbat as well. Kathleen, peace and blessings. Greetings to Jacqueline. Pug, I want to say Pug. Excuse me. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Forgive me if I mispronounced it. Your last name. Peace. Appreciate your support. Appreciate you watching the videos and the comments and so forth. Really appreciate you. Joe Nuff makes me think about Show Nuff. But peace and blessings to you. I want to say shalom to you. I want to say peace and blessings to Elder Brunson. Elder Brunson in the building. Family, show him some love. Great guy here. Great guy. Really appreciate him. B1 Queens Island. I want to say peace and blessings. Shalom to you. Holding it down up in the metro area, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. Peace and blessings to you. Who else do we have here? Kathleen. Want to say peace and blessings to you. So I think I covered everyone. And if I didn't, if I accidentally missed your name, like the old school would say, charge it to my head, not to my heart. Was not done intentionally. Let's see here. Let me make sure I got everyone. Actually, look like some others popped in. Let me get them real quick. Want to say peace and blessings to Angela Caraway. Want to say peace and blessings to J. Andrew Gray. Want to say peace and blessings to Majors. Want to say shalom to you. Who else do we have here? Praise Ahaya and Yashaya. Want to say peace and blessings. Shalom to you. My brother, Kadar Scales. Want to say peace and blessings to you. Shalom to you. Windwalker. Want to say shalom to you as well. All right. That covers everyone. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and just stretch the screen out. And so that way, family, feel free to post your questions or comments. Feel free to do so. And again, Dr. Carr, you're more than welcome to jump in if you want to chime in, or if I triggered a thought and you want to jump in and just share a thought, feel free to do so. But with that being said, family, system to destroy your hope, active hostility. And I want to start off with Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And it says, and I will put enmity, ayaba. I'm saying this from ancient Hebrew, right? Ayaba, some would say ayba, between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. The Hebrew word is zara, right? It shall bruise, shawap thy head, and thou shalt bruise, shawap his heel. All right, let me read it one more time. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head. And the Hebrew word for head is ra'ash, in the Israeli language is resh. So, and it means head, it means rank, it means protocol. All right. So it goes on to say, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So this is a key prophecy that was given right in the garden. So what is enmity? Ayaba. What is enmity? What does that mean? Well, let's see what it means. This is coming from the Oxford Dictionary. And this is what it says about enmity. The state or feeling or of being actively opposed or hostile, to someone or something. Let me read it again. The state or feeling of being actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. And this is where I get the thought, active hostility. So enmity, active hostility. So let's deal with the spirit of active hostility, right? And before we go on, and these are some of the thoughts that the Most High had given me that I would just quote every time I did this presentation. When you don't see and know your value, you allow others to define it for you. And this is part of the curse, you can say, that we've been subjected to, because we don't know most of us don't know who we are. We know and defend this construct that is called Black, that was created by the creators of the institution of race. And it's interesting that we start, with the conversations about the critical race theory and all that. But the fact of the matter is, when you understand the institution of race, that says it all. Okay, so when you don't see and understand your value, know your value, you allow others to define it for you. Also, the more heritage is made universal, in other words, Catholic, right? Because universal, Catholic, or generalized, those three words are interchangeable. You can actually add in generic. Now, when we understand the word universal, actually, you can break it into two words. The first three letters where it says uni, right? Uni is the Etruscan goddess. It's the triple goddess. That's where you get the concept of the Trinity, right? Other belief systems have the triple goddess, but it started out as the triple goddess, three women. You also have the Capitoline triad, which is also the three witches, right? The maiden, the mother, and crone. Those statues, I'm sure some of you guys may have seen the statues of the three witches, right? But anyway, so that's where you get the word uni from, the Etruscan goddess uni, because it was a triple goddess, right? Versal doctrine. So universe, the doctrine of uni. And that word is interchangeable with the word Catholic. Also general. Then you also get the word generic. And then when you go to the Proto-Indo-European word, in other words, pi, for generic, you'll get the word gene. Gene means to begat, right? Give birth to. So when we don't allow our heritage, when we allow others to define our heritage, guess what? We allow them to interject or interpolate the truth about who we are. They plant seeds that's going to what? Promote their system, but keep us in the dark about who we are. So the more heritage is made universal, in other words, Catholic, or generalized or generic, so will the increase of creating blank spaces and filling them with constructs and descriptors that contradict it. Okay. Now, this is not my saying. This is a saying, I'm sure you guys heard this before. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, by Charles Caleb Colton. Now, I want you to also pay attention to this hand in the background. I want you to pay attention to the ground, right? Because this would be considered chapped ground, Adamah. But notice how it's pretty much blending in with this hand here. And this is an image of Northeast Africa, right? So you can get an understanding of when you see Adamah, we're not dealing with some gray dust like many would try to teach, such as what's that comedian pastor? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Duplantis, Jesse Duplantis. Okay. But this gives you a better understanding when you see Adamah and you see Adam, right? Which comes from the word Adamah, which means the ground. So imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I don't feel flattered with what's happened to our community when it comes to our identity. But I also want to start off too with a scripture here, right? Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 1 through 3. This is for those that would try to tell us that, hey, the past is the past. Get over it. Why are we still trying to harbor on the past? Facts, right? Facts. Let me say this again. Facts. When we start dealing with our community, no one was treated like our community has been treated. That's a fact. No one has been lost, right? No community had to deal with the atrocities that our community had to deal with. All right. So it's a lot of different things that we had to be, we were subjected to, that we just, truth be told, no one can say anything towards it. But we're the only community that's told to get over it. See, these communities, the sons and daughters of those that have kidnapped our people, enslaved our people, raptured our people, because the word rapture actually means, it means rape. It means kidnapped, right? That's what it really means. All right. That's what it really means when we deal with the word rapture, right? So our community dealt with these things. We had all kinds of things that was done to us. And truth of the matter is, just starting with this country alone, there is a 400-year gap between our community and the Caucasian, the white community, when it comes to economic mobility and, some of the other things that come with the territory. But we get told, don't worry about it. Or why are we still talking about this? All right. And so this is where we have to make sure that we are doing things, and make sure we stay focused on the things that we need to stay focused on, not major in the minors. All right. So let's go ahead and read these 3 verses here. And I want you to really make a note of this. All the commandments which I command thee this day shall ye observe to do, that ye may live and multiply and go in and possess the land which Yahweh sware unto your fathers. Verse 2, this is key. And thou shalt remember all the way which Yahweh thy Elohim led thee. So the Most High is telling them, remember all the things that happened in the wilderness. Remember all the things that the Most High had done for them. Right? Remember all these things. When you go to Nehemiah, you see that Nehemiah gives a summary of some of the things that Israel had done in the wilderness, remembering. Then when you go to Acts chapter 7, we see Stephen is giving a historical account of Israel, how the Most High established Israel. So there's plenty of scriptures that we could go to that we are supposed to what? Remember our heritage. And heritage is very important. And we're going to cover some things here. We got quite a bit that we're going to cover tonight. But nevertheless, let's read the rest of it. And thou shalt remember, thou shalt remember, thou shalt remember. This is not optional. This is not optional. This is what we are supposed to do as the people of the Most High. And thou shalt remember all the way which Yahweh thy Elohim led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to what? Prove thee. Now notice this here, to know what was in thine heart, whether thou would keep his commandments or no. So many of the things that we go through is to see whether or not we're going to be obedient to the Most High. If we're not just in it for when things go good, because when you get challenges, that's where when the rubber meets the road, that's where you're going to really be tested about your commitment, your consistency. Can you still go to the right hand? And I just gave you the definition of the Hebrew word aman, because aman means consistency. It means to be permanent. It means trust. It means confirmation. It means faith. It also means go to the right hand. And we know that the Messiah sits at the right hand of the Father. Right. And it's in the culture of the Israelites, even before the Messiah came, took on this flesh to dwell among us, that the right hand of the Father was important. That was the purpose of the high priest going into the Holy of Holies. But anyway, not trying to get into all of that. But going back here says, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. So family, if you're dealing with some challenges right now, ask yourself, maybe it's a test to see if you're going to stay faithful to the Most High. Are you going to obey his law, statutes, and commandments? Now, here's the kicker, verse 3. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger and fed thee with manna or manna. It means manna or manna means what's this, right? Which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doeth not live by bread alone, but by what? Every word that proceedeth out of the mouth the mouth of Yah doeth man live. Now, some of you guys will recognize this from Matthew chapter 4, when the Messiah was led by the Holy Spirit to go into the wilderness. As you see, he humbled thee, suffered thee to hunger. And we know that the Messiah did not eat anything, though. He did not eat anything. As Hasatan began to test him, right, the Messiah responded with the word. And the Messiah quoted this right here. Remembering these things, remembering our history, remembering our culture, remember the law, statutes, and commandments, which is part of our culture. Guess what? That's how we're going to live. And that's what this entire chapter is reminding us of. So this is what the Messiah quoted from. His test being that John makes it clear that the Messiah, which is the word, right, put on this flesh, came to dwell among us. In the beginning was the word, and the word was Elohim, right? And the word was with Elohim, and the word was Elohim, right? So some of you guys would say Elohim. That's a whole nother discussion, but not a deal breaker. But we see that the Messiah is there, right? And the Messiah was tested to see if he know himself, because if the Messiah is the word, and Hasatan came with the word to tempt him, though he twisted the word around here and there, but he was tested, the Messiah, to see if he's going to hold on to the word, see if he knows himself. So ultimately, the test is to see if we're going to remain faithful to the Most High, to see if we really know who we are. All right, so let's get into it. Let's start with this first question here. Let's start with this first question. What is heritage? All right, what is heritage? All right, and I want to say this. I want to say this to the moderators. If there's anyone that's being a distraction to those that really trying to learn here, you know what to do. Just go ahead and block them, put them out, because we're not here to debate. We're not here to argue. We're not here to be a distraction, right? Because though there are people here that's online that really want to learn. It's not about trying to bring up the side discussions. Let's go ahead and just pay attention to what's going on here. All right. Matter of fact, let's see here. Let me look here just real quick, just to make sure. Let me make sure. I'm just glancing real quick to see if I see anyone, because right now, if I see you being a distraction, I'm just going to, put you out of the comment section, out of the chat, because we don't have any time for the foolishness. Let me see here real quick. And moderators, if you see anyone being, disruptive, don't just put them in timeout. Just kick them out of the chat, because we don't have time for this. We don't have time for this. And many of these guys that will come in here and try to be disruptive, they won't do that to the Jewish teachings. Go to the Jewish community as we know them. Let's see you go over there and, challenge what they're teaching. Right. We shouldn't have to deal with this over here. All right. So with that being said, I just thought I'd put that out there. I don't see the person name, one of the names I saw here. So let's go ahead and get back to this. All right. So let's deal with this word heritage. Right. What is heritage? What is heritage? All right. What is heritage? We're going to define this word. Right. But what is heritage? What is heritage? We're not going to define it right now, but we're going to use the scriptures to start off with the definition of it. And then I'm going to confirm this with some secular sources to show that the scriptures is right in alignment. And the definitions you see is right in alignment with the scriptures. So we see Marashah, right? So what is, heritage? What is heritage? We're going to define that. But let's start with going through the biblical definition of heritage, and we'll get to the academic definition of this word. But right now, let's start with the biblical definition, because I like to go into the scriptures and allow the scriptures to define these key words. And again, this is the lesson that I taught for 3 years in our assembly, or actually a little more than 3 years. This is the lesson. Every Shabbat, I taught this same lesson. And when me and my cousin, Bishop Brown, a few summers ago, we were traveling up and down this East Coast for free, right? Not charging anything. paying for our own expenses to get there. Long as they had a conference room, we came and taught. And this is what I taught for over 3 years, even going up and down this East Coast from Florida all the way up to Massachusetts. All right. So the biblical definition of heritage. Let's start with Genesis chapter 10 and family. Genesis chapter 10. There are so many nuggets inside Genesis chapter 10. So many nuggets. So many nuggets. Make Genesis chapter 10 one of the chapters that you put your bookmark, because this is a foundational chapter here. Let's start with the sons of Japheth. And you guys are going to catch on here. We see here, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham. And I want to make it clear, the reason why I say Ham versus Ham, because unfortunately, there are some that are teaching that Abraham, right, is both Shemitic and Hamitic, that he's half and half, right? Because they see Ham at the latter of the suffix of his name. When you understand Hebrew and you understand the Hebrew pronunciation of Ham, actually his name is pronounced Ham, right? With a ka or keth, right? But it's Ham. That's how you pronounce his name. And in Abraham's name, you're not going to see a ka or a keth, because keth, that's the Israeli pronunciation of the word or the letter, and ka is the ancient pronunciation of it. So the ancient pronunciation of Ham's name is Ham, and you will not see a ka inside Abraham's name. So that just completely knocks down that teaching that's circulating among the community. So again, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, Tyrus, right? Pay attention to those names, because some of these names you see in not Revelations chapter 30, but actually Ezekiel chapter 38, 39, 40, when we start dealing with a key war that's going to take place. And we see that it's going to be among the descendants of Japheth, right? And we'll deal with that when we get to it. All right. Verse 3, and the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, Togarmah, right? Those are some important names here. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles. Now, I want to encourage everyone, go watch the lesson that I did with words of confusion. And I break down the word Jew and Gentile, right? Gentile is a word of confusion, because if you understand the Latin Gentile or whatever, you did not see the entry, those that are not Jews or those that are not Israelites, in that definition. It just simply means nations that are people that are born and grouped into nations or clans or whatever the case may be. But it's not dealing with anything whether or not you're Jew or not, or if you're Israel or not. It just simply means nation. So if you go to the Tanakh, you'll see nations. So why is this key? Isle of the Gentiles, it simply means the people that are divided among the water. That's all that means, right? So by these were the isle of the Gentiles, the nations that are divided among the waters, right? Near the waters. So the isle of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families and their nations. So I highlighted these things for a reason. Make a note. In their lands, Aratazah, some would say Arats, right? But that's lands, or some in the Israeli language, Eretz. But again, we're dealing with ancient Hebrew. So in their lands, Aratazah or Arats, his tongue, Lashan, after their families, Mashpachah, and their nations, Gawayan, in the Israeli language, Goyim, right? Plural. So we see here land, tongues, and families, right? And then also highlight nations. So Make sure you make a note of these key words because we are going to revisit these words. All right. So let's deal with this question here. And you guys could put your response and we'll review your response. I want to say peace and blessings to my sister, Dr. Janet Newell. I want to say peace and blessings to her and all that she do as well. See some new people joining us tonight, some new faces in terms of in the chat. But was Japheth Quadar? Right? Was Japheth Quadar? If you believe that Japheth was Quadar, type 1, and Quadar simply means, and I'll give you the full definition of it, it means dark. It means dark and ashy. So was Japheth Quadar? If you believe Japheth was Quadar, type 1. If you believe that Japheth has always been Caucasian, right, always been white per se, according to the institution of race, type 2 in the comment section before we continue. All right. If you believe that Japheth was dark melanated, type 1. If you believe he wasn't, type 2. All right. So far, I see ones from Timothy Prince, from Jacqueline Pug, Brother Enoch, see Just Reese, Chad Rowe, or let's see here, Jason Camphor. So we see so far, for the most part, we see the consensus of ones. All right. Do we have any twos here? Let's see here. I think I see a 1, 2 here. Let's see. Kathleen, I see a 2 here. So the majority are saying that they believe that Japheth was dark melanated. All right. Well, we're going to answer this question here. Let's go ahead and answer this question. All right. Let's make sure we get everyone here. All right. And again, peace and blessings to my sister, Dr. Newell. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let's go ahead and answer this question. Was Japheth Quadar? Let's start with Jeremiah, right? And we're going to answer that question, but I want to start with Jeremiah. Some of you guys may have seen this portion of the teaching in another lesson, but I want to reiterate this because many will teach trying to, in their attempt to try to debunk our community, because many will use Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 2 to teach that here is making it clear that Israel is dark, right? Dark. And according to the institution of race, black. So let's go ahead and break this down. I want to give you proper clarity of this text, in spite of what others may try to teach, to try in an attempt to, quote, debunk our community. Let's deal with Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 2, and we're going to answer this question about Japheth after we go through this. So Judith mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black into the ground, and the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. So I want you to pay attention to these words. Abal, Amal, right? And also Quadar. I didn't put it in here, but Quadar, that's what you see here. Now, what you will be taught, right, by many that try to interpolate this text to try to push a different narrative than what the actual text says, they'll say black, and this text means mourning. But we see Judah mourn, right? And then we see languish, which is sick, but still part of this overall mourning. And then we'll see that they are black unto the ground. So Judith mourning, and the gates are languish. They are sick. They are mourning unto the ground. That makes absolutely no sense. But I'm going to give you the proper clarity of this text. So the Hebrew definition of mourn, abal, let's see what it means. All right, make a note. To bewail, lament, mourn. Now, they are not dealing with sackcloth and ashes in this text, but I'm going to give you a key definition here. Languish, amal. Let's see what languish means. It says this: to droop, by implication, to be sick, to be weak. So I want y'all to make sure y'all write these definitions down, write these words down, because I'm going to give you proper clarity and its proper context. One thing I learned from school, especially, when you're dealing with the scriptures, right? you have to read things within its proper context. This is where you start getting into hermeneutics. This is where you start getting into understanding how to approach the text when you start dealing with exegete versus eisegete. I'm not getting into all of that, try to make it seem like I know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? I don't like to get into all of that because a lot of my old pastor friends, they love to throw that around before they give their messages. You know what I mean? You guys probably heard this before from leaders that are teaching. Well, I want to keep it simple. I want to keep it brief today. Thank God for allowing me to be in front of this assembly today. And I know that I can really easily exegete the text, but because of the time constraint, I am not going to exegete the text. I'm not going to exegesis the text, right? I'm just going to keep it simple. No, we're not doing all of that. Okay. But anyway, so again, amal means to droop, by implication, to be sick, right? Be weak. All right. So remember these key words. So proper read would be Judah is displaying a passionate display of grief, right? And their gates, their city is weak, right? They are sick. Right? The people within the city are sick. They are weak. Now let's define this word quadar, right? Where you see that word black. Let's see what it means. It says this, to be what? Ashy, an example, dark. Let me say that again. To be ashy, an example, dark. Now, this is where they would try to go to here by saying, hey, to mourn in sackcloth or sordid garments. This is not what's happening in this text, right? Be black, right? Blackish, be darkened, make darkened, heavily, cause to mourn, right? But in the proper context here, we are dealing with what? To be ashy, an example, dark colored. And I'm going to give you an illustration. Image of this. So Jeremiah 14:2 is describing Judah's physical appearance during a famine. And this is what they are describing. This is dark and ashy. And, my brothers and sisters, you guys know how it goes. If you take a shower, right, and you don't put any, like my grandmother made us do, put Vaseline on. Vaseline was like for everything. Vaseline was for your skin. Vaseline was for your lips. Vaseline was for your hair. Vaseline was for your shoes. Yes, my grandmother had us shining our shoes with Vaseline. Right. So she used Vaseline for everything. So if you guys didn't have to use Vaseline, you had a separate product for everything, you grew up good, because Vaseline was like the all purpose. Right. But anyway, this is a picture of a family during the famine over in Somalia. Right? Notice they are dark, but you see what? Their skin is ashy. This is what Jeremiah is explaining. We all know how it goes. If you go in that shower and then you call yourself going outside and that air hits your skin is going to become ashy, right? It's going to become ashy. Okay. So, and this is the example of being ashy, especially when we start dealing with a famine. And that's what they are dealing with in this text. Now let's go to verse 3 and 4 to confirm this. And their nobles have sent their little ones to the waters. They came to the pits and found no water. They returned with their vessel empty. They were ashamed and confounded and covered their heads. So because of their appearance, their skin being ashy, ashy dark, they being dark and ashy, they're weak, they're starting to look sick. So what did they do? They covered their heads. Didn't say they put ashes on their face. They're not dealing with sackcloth. No, they covered their heads. If we go back to, let me go back to the slide here, right? As you see, right, this mother here, she's covering her head, right? Look at the eyes. Look at the skin texture. Look at the weight loss here. So that's what this is describing here. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. All right. So again, and their nobles have sent their little ones to the waters. They came to the pits and found no water. They returned with their vessels, right? Kalai, empty. Ra Yaquam. They were ashamed and confounded and covered their heads. Verse 4, because the ground, Adamah, is chapped, Katha, for there was no rain in the earth. The plowmen were ashamed. They covered their heads. Come on now, you guys know the feeling. I've been there before. Hands are ashy. Forgot to put lotion on my hands. Headed to work, and I look and see my hands are ashy. I'm trying to do everything to cover my hands. I'm trying to do everything to remove that ashiness off my skin. Right. So again, because the ground Adamah is chapped, Katha, for there was no rain in the earth. The plowmen were ashamed. They covered their heads. Okay. So let's deal with the Hebrew definition of the word chapped. Now, of course, it's not going to give you a lot here. So that's why we're going to use the etymology. But the key is we see to be shattered, be broken. So their skin is what? Looking shattered, chapped, be broken. All right. So we see to prostrate, to break down, beat down. But this is what we're going to highlight: to be shattered, be broken, right? Dealing with the skin complexion, right? Not skin complexion, but the texture of their skin. Not skin complexion, but the texture in this particular word. So let's deal with chap. Let's see what it says. The etymology definition of this word chap, it says cause to split or crack, right? So their skin is chapped. Their skin is dry. So their skin is what? Sores can come from being chapped. Just like with your lips. If you don't put something on your lip balm or whatever, and you call yourself yarning or you call yourself whatever the case may be, you're going to feel the pain of your lips were cracking from being dry. Judah's skin was chapped. It was dry. They were ashy, dark and ashy. So that's what happens. You can get sores from ashy skin. You can, a number of things could happen. A number of things can occur. So we see chap means cause to split or crack. Now, let me go back to this slide here so you can see what this is actually saying here. Let's go to this slide here. Let's go all the way back to here. All right. Notice this here. Notice the chap ground here. Right. Notice the hand of brother man here. You see how his hand is a reflection of the ground, right? But this ground is a little chapped here, it's a little dry. But this is from Northeast Africa, right? But this gives you an illustration of Adamah and Adam. Let me say this again. Adamah, this ground, Adam, right? This is the true illustration of what it means to be dark. Right now, hand can, because the light is reflecting on it, so you can't really tell if his hand is dark and ashy, but you can see that it blends in with the ground. So this is an illustration. All right. So let's go back here. All right. So in a nutshell, what this text is telling us, Judah is displaying a passionate display of grief, and their gates, their city, right? The people within the city are weak. They are sick, and they are dark and ashy like the ground. That's what it means. So again, let's go back to this question here. Was Japheth Quadar? Was Japheth Quadar? All right. Was Japheth Quadar? All right. Was he Quadar? Was Japheth Shakar? Right? Because that's another Hebrew word that means dark. Let's see what Shakar means. Right? It says here, To be dim or dark, be black. Right? To be dim or dark, be black. So was Japheth Shakar or Shakawar? Was he dark? Well, I'm going to give you sources that you can make a note of. So I encourage you guys to pay attention to this source that I give you. At one time, Japheth was Shakar or Shakawar. Let's prove this. This is coming from an article titled Europeans Were Dark-Skinned Until 8,000 Years Ago. Pale complexions were brought to Europe, from the Near East studies claim. And this is coming from the Daily Mail. Now, I know some will say, hey, wait a minute, Daily Mail, how are you using that as a source? Hold up. I'm going to give you additional sources. But notice what this particular source say, right? So it doesn't sound like we pushing conspiracy theories or nothing like that, right? I'm giving you actual sources. It has been at the root of division and persecution for centuries. But it seems that the white skin of most modern Europeans did not evolve in Europe at all. Now, genetic research has revealed that ancient European populations were dark-skinned for far longer than had originally been thought. Now, let's go to another article. This is the BBC. Europeans were dark-skinned until 8,000 years ago. Pale complexions were brought to Europe from the Near East, studies claim. We're dealing with Northeast, kind of the northern part of Africa. All right. Near East studies claim. Now, notice this here. Actually, I got to correct this here. That's incorrect. That's the duplicate. I didn't pay attention to it till just now. But the actual article is titled DNA Secrets of Ice Age Europe Unlocked. All right. So my apologies. But notice what it says here. Some of the earliest arrivals on the continent contributed little to later populations between 37,000 years ago and 14,000 years ago. Different groups of Europeans were descended from a single founder population. Now, I want to encourage you guys, don't get out of whack. Don't get upset when you see these numbers of 37,000 years and 14,000 years, because again, nothing is finite when it comes to these dates. We understand that, but we're dealing with science. So take in, the meat and spit out the bones per se. So don't get upset like, some of the comments I've seen with people, some of our people posting with the Adam, the scientific Adam versus the biblical Adam, right? Don't get caught up when you hear them putting all kinds of, ideas out there, thoughts out there, but one thing they confirmed that Adam is dark. He's melanated. So don't get caught out there when you hear them speculating on certain things. This is where we have to make sure we're not majoring in the minor. There's so many nuggets you could take out that video and you can use that to confirm, just like what they did. They confirmed that Adam was not some dusky guy in terms of white dust and all this other stuff. He was a dark melanated man. Okay. So again, don't get upset at what I'm getting ready to read to you. Okay. Here we go. Some of the earliest arrivals on the continent contributed little to later populations, but between 37,000 years ago and 14,000 years ago, different groups of Europeans were descended from a single founder population. Analysis of genes carried by Ice Age Europeans shows, among other things, that they had dark complexions and brown eyes. Only after 14,000 years ago did blue eyes begin to spread, and pale skin only appeared across much of the continent for 7,000 years ago. Continent after 7,000 years ago. Born by early farmers from where? The Near East. They're dealing with Africa. That's when you see Near East, they're really dealing with Africa. All right. But anyway, European populations possess more Neanderthal ancestry than present-day people. consistent with the idea that much of the DNA we inherited from the Neanderthals had harmful effects. Scientists think that this inheritance was progressively lost via natural selection. All right, it goes on to say the Arygnasians, a 35,000-year-old male from Guyet, Belgium, belonged to a distinctive branch of the Ice Age population, right? So pointing them to who? The Arygnasians, right? So it goes on to say DNA was extracted from the upper bone of the hunter who was associated with the Arygnasians archaeological culture. So let's not stop there because I gave you some articles, but now let me give you another source, right? Let me give you another source, right? I gave you articles, but now let me give you a source, an additional source. Prehistoric Man and His Story, right? This is Professor G.F. Scott Elliott, okay? The Arygnasians found the Mousterian or Neanderthaler in France. So it's saying that the Neanderthaler, the Mousterians, they come from these group of Caucasians called the Arygnasians, right? Or Neanderthaler and France. And during all the changes sketched above, the former seem to have held their own in that country. After the Worm Ice Age, the Arygnasians modified their weapons and mode of life. And after the theory which we have adopted became the men of La Madeleine, these Arygnasians and their Magdalenian descendants pervaded all Central and Southern Europe. Their remains have also been discovered in Valletta or Malta and in Phoenicia. In other words, Na Antilias, and somewhere else, as we shall try to show later. But during this long period of time, two other races also, right? And it goes on to say, we have seen that the Arygnasians was originally an African. Let me say that again. We have seen that the Arygnasians was originally African. And if he traversed North Africa on his way from Egypt and Mesopotamia, it would have been a very remarkable fact if he had not come in contact with the African pygmy. Guess what? The word pygmy, that is a European word, because these particular tribes or this particular groups, they did not refer to themselves as pygmies. That's a European construct. So African pygmies, right, or his ancestors for the Bushmen, Wambatu, and other pygmies are the oldest. But it goes on to say on page 162, moreover, since the discovery of this burial, characteristic skulls of the same Negroid affinity have been found in Spain, in Brittany, in other words, the Neolithic date, at Sierra, and it goes on to say not earlier than the 13th century, in Sardinia, at Astorf, and perhaps in Caithness. So again, just giving you confirmation, the original Europeans, guess what? They were dark people. They were dark melanated people. And I'm just giving you some sources that you can review later at a later time. So don't believe this stuff you see by, like, for example, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses. Even in the church, they would teach that Japheth was Caucasian or white, and that Ham, dark, but then Shem is an in-between, mixed, right? That's not correct by far. They all were dark melanated, okay? And you have to understand landscaping, geographical location makes a world of a difference on how you adjust to that territory. And that's a whole nother discussion, not getting into all of that. So the original Europeans, the descendant of Japheth, they were dark people, right? But I want to also now go into another area. Let's deal with some DNA. So we proved that Japheth was dark, right? Now let's deal with, and when you hear me say Proto-Indo-European, that's another way of saying the descendants of Japheth, all right? That's just a term for jargon for when you're dealing with languages and linguistics. All right. But anyway, let's deal with this here. Highlight out of Khazaria, evidence for Jewish genome lacking. Now, this is coming from a geneticist by the name of Aaron Elhake. He is from the Jewish community. He is an Ashkenazi Jew, but he back in 2012 really shook their entire community. Why? Because of this right here. He says, right, in a recently published study of genome biology, evolution, and again, 2012, Elhake, he is calling for a rewrite of commonly held assumptions about Jewish ancestry. So he's saying, hey, based upon his findings, DNA, he's saying they got to rewrite. They got to rethink what has been taught and assumed about the Jewish community's ancestry. He goes on to say, instead of being primarily the descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel, present-day Jewish populations are, finds Elhake, primarily the children of a Turkish people who lived in what is now Russia, north of Georgia, right, east of Ukraine. This civilization, the Khazars, converted from tribal religions to Judaism between the 7th and the 19th century, right? So another key point, some additional key points that I want to share about the Ashkenazis, right? This is coming from DNA Ties, an article titled DNA Ties, Ashkenazi Jews to a group of just 330 people from the Middle Ages. And this is coming from the LA Times. And this is what they say. And notice you see Einstein, because Einstein is from the Jewish community as we know them, right? So says a new study in the journal Nature Communication. An international team of scientists sequenced the complete genomes of 128 healthy Ashkenazi Jews and compared each of those sequences with the others, as well as with the DNA of 26 Flemish people from Belgium. And if you pay attention to the different tests, the different things that they put together, they don't include our community. They were including all European groups, right? That's a fact. And I have other sources, and I'm going to share one source, just a little portion of it today or tonight, but it's a fact. They were not including any melanated people in these tests, these formulas, these things that they came up with, right? So these different modules that they created. Okay, so again, it says that, going back here, right, excuse me, DNA ties Ashkenazi group to just 330 people from the Middle Ages. And we're going to deal with Middle Ages shortly, because that is not the Antiquities. We're dealing with the Middle Ages, right? 330. That's not a lot. This is 330 individuals, not families, but 330 individuals. But notice what it says here. The analysis allowed them to trace the genetic roots of this population to a founding group in the Middle Ages. Ashkenaz, let me say that again, Ashkenaz in Hebrew refers to Germany. So when you hear Germany, think of Ashkenaz. So when that coin that I shared when I did the Whoopi Goldberg narrative, right now on the whole controversy, so to speak, in the beginning, I showed a coin. Prior to the Holocaust and all of that, a coin from Germany. On one side, it had the Nazi swastika, has the swastika on one side, and it had the Zionist Star of David, or the Shield of David, Magan Dawid. It had it on the flip side, and you see Palestina, right? Which is Palestine or Philistine. Yeah, you get it. So, but in a nutshell, you see what? When you see German, right? When you see Ashkenaz, it simply means German Jews. When you say Ashkenazi Jews, that is simply saying German Jews. That's the place of origin. All right. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. That's why I'm sharing this here. So when you see Ashkenaz in Hebrew refers to Germany. So Ashkenazi Jews are those who originated where? Notice what it says, in Europe. Wait a minute. They're saying that the Ashkenazis originated in Europe, right? Do I need to say this one more time? Matter of fact, let me get my, let me go ahead and get a couple of my animations out here. So again, Ashkenazi Jews are those who originated in Eastern Europe.
What?
That's right, Eastern Europe, not the Middle East, not Northeast Africa, rather, because that's what the Middle East is really, Northeast Africa. So we need to toss this stuff out, this poor teaching out, this deceptive teaching out. Yeah, we need to give it a garbage can. Matter of fact, let's give it a 3-piece and let's give them their order to go. All right. So as you see here, it says again, Ashkenaz in Hebrew refers to Germany. Remember, Ashkenaz is what? Is who? The son of Gomer. And I encourage you guys to watch the lesson I did on the globe, Greek letter organizations. I give you the proper clarity of what that letter G stands for that's in that compass, right? But anyway, as you see, Ashkenaz in Hebrew refers to Germany, and Ashkenazi Jews are those who originated in Europe. Now, this is the this is the writing, the document that they're referring to, right? This is coming from Nature Communication. This is the publication they're making reference to. Ashkenazi Jews or Jewish population is a genetic isolate close to European and Middle Eastern groups with genetic diversity patterns conducive to disease mappings. But notice this. Here we report high-depth sequencing of 128 complete genomes of Ashkenazi controls compared with European samples. Our AJ or Ashkenazi Jewish panel has 47% more novel variants. But here's the kicker. Let's just get to here. Our panel improves imputation accuracy for Ashkenazi Jews, SNP arrays by 28% and covers at least one haplotype and 67% of any Ashkenazi Jews genome, along with identical by descent segments. But here's the kicker. This is basically just reinforcing what the article stated. Even though it had 330 there, here it has 350. Reconstruction of recent Ashkenazi Jewish history from such segments confirms a recent bottleneck of merely 350 individuals. But basically it's saying that this is where who they descended from, 350 Europeans, right? And this is another thing that I want to address because we hear a lot of talk about DNA, right? And again, I've said this from the beginning. If you understand technology, and I know we got some geeks here. If you're a geek up in here like I am, type 1. If you're not a geek, type 2. I'm not mad at you, but you guys know I can go geek mode. And I think I'm going a little geek mode right now. So if we got some geek mode geeks up in here, type 1. Don't be ashamed of your geekness. All right. Get your card, right? Not only am I a client, I'm the geek president. I'm the geek mode president. So if you're a geek, type 1. All right. But while you do that, let's deal with the ENJ, right? When you see ENJ, these haplogroups, and if you guys are not familiar with haplogroups, right? What a haplogroup is based upon what is called the Y mutation. The Y mutation, right? The Y chromosome is in only the fathers, it's only in men, right? It's only in men. So when you come up with these haplogroups, right? This is where you start getting into the mutations of the Y chromosome, right? So again, the DNA technology was really founded in the 18th, 19th century. Well, really the 18th century, if I remember correctly. Can't remember the specific date, but it wasn't really used until we started getting into Guess what? 1947, 1948. What's significant about those dates? And at that time when it was being used, many were attempting to use that to justify or prove who's smarter than who. So even this technology, right, is still evolving as we see today. So when we look at the E and J haplogroups, right, it's saying that the E and J haplogroups point to those that have originated in the Northeast or Middle East Africa. All right. So before DNA came about, there was 4 steps, 4 requirements to confirm someone being a blood descendant of the ancient Israelites. We're not going to go into that tonight. So let's deal with Khazaria.com, E&J haplogroups. All right, let's deal with this. I didn't create this. This is Khazaria.com. And as you see, it's giving you a number of DNA groups, haplogroups rather. The I, R, right? The N, right? But we see I1, R1A, R1B, and N, right? So it's giving you some information about this. I'm not getting into all of this. But then when we get to, for example, where it says R1B, common in Western Europe, and then it goes into the subclades like R1B, 1A, 2A, 1A, 1A. Right now, I get into all of this stuff here. All right. And then when we see the N, right, 1C1 is a subclade found in this project, and it's especially common among Finns, Estonians, right? So in Saami. But this is where we want to highlight. Okay. We see here E and J haplogroups have Middle Eastern origins or Northeast African origins. So just want to highlight that here with these 2 haplogroups, because a lot of talk about the DNA. That's why I don't get caught up in all of that stuff. Because again, when you're dealing with people that really don't want to know the truth, they will always move the goalposts, right? I wasn't even trying to do my DNA until some people that we were dealing with that was from the Christian community said, hey, you should be able to prove who you are with DNA. Then when the DNA came out and said that me and my cousin, Bishop Brown, that we're connected to Israel, of course, it said Jewish, right, inside our DNA results. But regardless, it showed that we were connected to the ancient people. Then that's when the goalposts started being moved. Oh, you can't trust DNA. You can't do this. You can't do that. So anyway, let's deal with this strong rebuke from Revelation chapter 3, verse 15 and 16. Let's see what this strong rebuke says. I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm, went too far, lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. So this is dealing with someone that's inconsistent, someone that's not reliable, someone that's all over the place, inconsistent. Either you're going to be hot or you're going to be cold, but the worst that you can be is lukewarm. And for me, lukewarm does not taste good, especially some things that don't taste good lukewarm. I love hot cereal. I love my oatmeal, right? I cannot eat lukewarm oatmeal. I can't eat lukewarm grits. And I know some of you guys probably do it, but I can't put sugar on it either. Man, you put sugar on your grits where I grew up at, then you get handled. I'll just say that. So we had to we put sugar on cream of wheat, Wheatina, right? Those hot cereals. But anyway, there's nothing like eating something that should be hot and is lukewarm. There's nothing like drinking something that you're expecting it to be hot and it turns out to be what? Lukewarm. So lukewarm, many like to be in that middle area. Actually, that if you notice when you're dealing with an instigator, the instigator is in a lukewarm area. I grew up in an era, when we fought with our hands. Of course, some had knives, but anyway, but we always had that instigator that would stand in the middle and say, baddest man hit my hand. And so whoever hit the hand first, then they hit the opposite person, the person that's standing on the opposite side. But it was that instigator standing in what? That lukewarm position. While both the people that want to fight each other, they're in a firm position or wanting to fight, but they just don't want to throw the first punch. Right. So again, that's what that instigator is in a lukewarm position, because guess what? They could go either way. So neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out. So I said that all that to say that there is nothing good about the middle. Let me say this again. There is nothing good about being in the middle, right? Thayakan or Thaykan, right? But ancient Hebrew, Thayakan. There is nothing good about being in the middle, right? Hope I didn't cause a fight up in here with me saying that about the grits, but hey, it is what it is, right? But nevertheless, we see here, and I'm going to prove to you, there's nothing good about being lukewarm, right? Lukewarm. Here we go. There's nothing good about being in the middle. Let's start with the Middle Ages, because we mentioned the Middle Ages. Remember, it said that the DNA, nature communication, were able to narrow down the Ashkenazi Jews, right? The German Jews, right, to 330 to 350 individuals, and European and Germany, basically, right? That was in the Middle Ages. But what is the Middle Ages, right? Dayakan Yawam, right? What is the Middle Ages? What is the Middle Ages? Make a note. This is what the Middle Ages is. The period of European history from the fall of the Roman Empire and the West, in other words, the 5th century, to the fall of Constantinople in 1453. But notice what it says, or more narrowly, from the 10th century to the 14th century, or 1453. We could say the 10th century to the 15th century. So the period of European history. So when you understand Middle Ages, when you say Middle Ages, guess what? You are expressing history from the lens of the Europeans. That's all it is. Right? That's what it means. That's all it means. All right. Let me see here. Somebody mentioned trolls. All right. I can't see the chat like talking about it. So if I see any trolls, I will definitely block them. Okay. And if there's any trolls, family, because I can't do two things at one time. If you see a troll, put their name inside the chat and I'll go through it and I will put them out. All right. Because we're not dealing with any distractions over here. All right. So again, Middle Ages. See, it's so many breadcrumbs in front of us if we just take the time out to do our proper vetting of information. All right. Appreciate it, doctor. Appreciate it. Kick them out of here. If they anyone disrupting, just kick them out. All right. But anyway, so when we deal with the Middle Ages, when you hear the term Middle Ages, you're hearing basically what you're saying. You're explaining history from the lens of the European. Notice what it says, the period of European history. It didn't say the the history of world history. It didn't say the history of all the different countries in this particular area or during a particular time. It says the period of European history from the fall of the Roman Empire in the West. All right. So again, but it says narrowly from the 10th to the 15th century. But notice this here, the earliest part of the period, right, from the 5th century to the 11th century. See, this is where so many of us are under a charm, because when we think of Middle Ages, we think of antiquities. But the Middle Ages that they're referring to is from the 10th to the 15th, to the 14th century. Fact, or to the 15th century, if we want to be right and exact, because 1453 would be considered the 15th century. All right. So the earliest part of the period from the 5th century to the 12th century is sometimes distinguished as the Dark Ages. Well, why do they call it the Dark Ages? It goes on to say, while the later part, right, the 11th through the 15th century, is often thought as Middle Ages proper. Go figure, right? Let me play this clip again because it makes me think about this clip here. Let me play this clip here that I played earlier about Northeast Africa, the Middle East.
All right, this is Saudi Arabia over here. Now, if you see this in Hebrew, it says Haluak Afrikani, the African plate. Here it is right here. Israel is sitting right here. Israel is sitting on the Haluak Afrikani, which means that Israel is northeast Africa.
Without question, we are in Northeast Africa. We are landlocked to Egypt, with the exception of the Suez Canal, which was a man-made ditch, a boundary now between, in fact, it's not even really a boundary anymore since Egypt has reclaimed the Sinai Peninsula. But nevertheless, even those of us who are Pan-Africanists in our thinking and Afrocentric, we forget and we leave off that portion of Northeast Africa and don't want to claim anything beyond that.
Europeans classified this area as a Middle East. You know, and then since this the Middle East, the other question, where the Middle West? Where the Middle North and where the Middle South? They don't have no geographical terms like that.
You see, that's what happens. See, they make up all kinds of terms to discredit or shift the focus from our people or dark melanated people from Akibulan, from Afar, from Africa, right? Anything but to admit that we are superior. I'm not even going to say were or was. This institutional race was a system or is a system that they use to turn the world upside down. All the major resources are where? The bulk of it is in Africa. So we see the Dark Ages. And if you guys study history, and some of you guys are history buffs here, when you study this period, what they call the Dark Ages, you'll come to the understanding of how the Moors ruled Spain. That's what they're referring to, Dark Ages. To them, Dark Ages, when the Moors ruled Spain. And then when you start studying the Khazarians, that's when you see how, their input to overcoming or the defeat of the Moors in the Iberian Peninsula. But when you deal with the Dark Ages, this is what we're dealing with when the Moors ruled. That's a fact. So they labeled it Dark Ages. But after the Dark Ages, they call it what? The Middle Age proper. The Middle Ages proper. Right? It's sort of like when you see Asia Minor. Right? What is an Asia Minor? See, they come up with all kinds of constructs. Why? Again, because remember, when we talk about the Middle Ages, the period of European history. So they're going to always come up with these constructs to downplay the history of others, to push what? Make sure the focus is on the European history, the European story, their point of view of what history is, right? Remember, when you allow others to define your value, they're going to always interpolate it. That's a fact. Okay, so let's go to continue on. Slavery and the Catholic Church. This is still dealing with the Middle Ages. Nothing good in the Middle Ages, right? Papal grants to the King of Portugal. This is Slavery and the Catholic Church, 1975, page 52 and 53. Papal grants, right? Papal, the Pope, who the church called pops, right? That's the papa. That's their father. Right? That is the father in the Catholic Church and also the Christian Church, because the Christian Church come out of Catholicism. You could just call it a denomination of Catholicism, no matter how many would try to, massage the names and all. The Christian Church came out of Catholicism. All right. So papal grants to the King of Portugal, right? Papal, this is still dealing with all of Christianity, Christendom, as you see here, Christianity, all of those religious institutions, including Judaism and Islam, was at war against our people. But it says papal grants to the kings of Portugal given authority to enslave Saracens and other non-Christians of West Africa, with whom Christendom is at war. Christendom is what? At war. In 1442, a Portuguese captain brought to the Gold Coast some Moorish prisoners of war and exchanged them because, again, the Portuguese at that time was at war with the Moors. And remember, when you start getting into the sub-Saharan slave trade that predates, right, the transatlantic world war, because we can even call it Arabic slave trade an Arabic world war, or war within that territory, because they had our ancestors as slaves. That they refer to our ancestors as the wandering sheep herders, right? Israel's known for what? Being shepherds, right? We could go into the book of Ezekiel and prove that. But anyway, in 1442, a Portuguese captain, and matter of fact, when you start dealing with the lineage of Judah, right? From Judah to Moses, had his staff, his shepherd's staff. He learned how to be a shepherd that 40 years when he left Egypt to escape for his life. But anyway, so in 1442, a Portuguese captain brought to the Gold Coast some Moorish prisoners of war, exchanged them for 10 Negro slaves. So the Moors had 10 Negro slaves, right? And notice what they did here. Brought these back to Lisbon, which is a trading settlement, was established at Lagos by 1444. It would appear that by 1452, the Portuguese were anxious to establish their property rights over their newly discovered Western African territories. And so the Pope Nicholas V, let me say it again, the Pope Nicholas V, who does that sound like, guys? Pope Nicholas, and you know that Pope Nicholas has been given sainthood. So Pope Nicholas V, doesn't that sound like Saint Nicholas, right? Who has the name of Saint Nicholas? Can somebody help me out with that? What character has the name of Saint Nicholas and ties into Odin, right? Who is that? Who is that individual that many within our community and the church teaching our children, teaching their children to be in fear of, right? To worship. Pope Nicholas, Saint Nicholas V, was approached and was apparently led to believe, and we'll highlight that real quick, but let me see here, see some of the answers here. Santa Claus, Santa Claus, yeah, you guys are on it. Saint Nick, old Santa Claus, right? see where I'm going at with this family? Where there's smoke, there's always fire. So Pope Nicholas V, Saint Nicholas, Santa Claus, was approached and was apparently led to believe that these territories of the Guinea coast were inhabited by Saracens and other enemies of Christendom. There is no other explanation of a series of papal documents which applied the well-known contemporary rules of war to the situation in West Africa. This is what you guys need to pay attention to. The transatlantic, what they label it as a slave trade, is to dumb down what the atrocities that happened to our people. It was a world war. See, we've been institutionalized to classify World War I, right? World War II. We was institutionalized to focus on what? American history, focus on European history, but we don't focus on what happened in Akibulan with our people. More people died in the transatlantic World War than both World War I and World War II combined. So guess what? The transatlantic World War, which is called the slave trade, guess what? Guess what that means? That means that was a world war. The key to these so-called world wars is, where do Israel play in? Where does Israel fit into all of this? So when we understand this here, when we understand what this means is, in a nutshell, right? There was a war that was declared on our ancestors by who? Leading the way? The Pope. leading other nations, right, to go to war against our people, to kidnap. All right, to kidnap. Okay, so let's continue on here. So the local Negro inhabitants were not Saracens, were not Muslims, were not enemies of Christendom. So if they weren't Saracens, they were not Muslims. So how can they not be the enemies of Christendom, but the Pope still declared war on them? This tells you that they weren't practicing. Well, we'll break down Saracens and we'll break down Muslims, but we're going to give a clarity on exactly why they were not considered enemies, but they still the Pope still issued a declaration of war, right? The declaration of war. Okay. So again, the local Negro inhabitants were not Saracens, were not Muslims. So who are Saracens? Let's break this down real quick so you guys understand. This is coming from the Britannica.com. Saracens in the Middle Ages, right? We're still dealing with what? The Middle Ages, history from the lens of the Europeans. Any person, Arab, Turk, or others who profess the religion of Islam. So Saracens were anyone that was like Arab, Turks, or any others who profess the religion of Islam. So this is telling you that the particular people that they targeted were not practicing Islam. They were not practicing going into that Quran. They were not practicing Islam. They were not in that religion. Then it goes on to say earlier in the Roman world, there had been references to Saracens, and it goes on to say by late classical authors in the first 3 centuries AD. The term being then applied to Arab tribes living in the Sinai Peninsula, right? So Saracens, guess what? They are Arabs, they are Turks, right? So let's highlight another article here. African laborers for a new empire, Iberia slavery, the Atlantic world. Let's highlight something real quick, just to confirm the sources that we highlighted. Portuguese mariners began to return to Iberia with captives acquired in West Africa and West Central Africa. Notably, the treatment of Black Gentiles was addressed in 1452 and 1455 when Pope Nicholas V issued a series of papal bulls that granted Portugal the right to enslave sub-Saharan Africans. Church leaders, what it says, church leaders, let me say it again. Let's go back here. Church leaders, let me say this one more time for our brothers and sisters that just cannot let go of Christianity, that just cannot let go of that church, right? It says church leaders. Let me say it in slow motion. Church leaders. For the people in the back. All right. So it says church leaders argued that slavery served as a natural deterrent and Christianizing influence to barbarous behavior among pagans. Using this logic, the Pope issued a mandate. Wait a minute. Doesn't this sound familiar? The Pope issued a mandate. Did we just have to deal with mandates here? Right? Pope issued Papa, the father, right, of the Christian and Catholic or the Catholic Christian Church. The Pope issued a mandate to the Portuguese King Alfonso and instructed him, right? I'm not getting into all that, but notice this here, right? It goes on to say to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagan whatsoever, and to reduce their person to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successor the kingdom, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit. All right. We already know this. It's not a coincidence that Santa Claus, St. Nicholas' name is similar to the Pope. All right. But anyway, let's go ahead and highlight another thing that's not good about the Middle Ages. What time do we have? All right. I know it's getting kind of late, but let me go a little bit longer. All right. PBS, The Middle Passage. right? Remember I said there's nothing good. There's nothing good. Nothing good about the middle, right? Nothing good about being in the middle. Here we go. Let's see what PBS says about the Middle Ages or the Middle Passage. For weeks, months, sometimes as long as a year, they waited in the dungeons of the slave factories scattered along Africa's west coast. They had already made the long, difficult journey from Africa's interior, but just barely out of the roughly 20 million, right? 20 million, even though it's more, the numbers are higher than this, but out of the roughly 20 million who were taken from their homes and sold into slavery, half didn't complete the journey to the west, to the African coast, most of those dying along the way. So this is telling us millions and millions of our ancestors died just getting to the slave ships. Just getting to the slave ships. That number is more than 20 million. But millions upon millions of our ancestors died just getting to those slave ships, getting to those baracas, right? And we're going to deal with that in a second. And it says here, and the worst was yet to come. So sometime as long as a year, they waited in dungeons. So let's deal with this word cone real quick, because family, this is one of those words, right? I don't like using, right? I never use the word cone. And we should never allow any of our brothers and sisters to get up under our skin and we are calling them cones, right? Before I would call them, I would rather use this right here and not using the cone word. This is what I would rather use.
This is Hoppin' Bob. You run afoul of Bob, you run afoul of me. You run afoul of Bob, you run afoul of me. You run afoul of Bob, you run afoul of me.
All right, that's who we should refer to these sellouts, so to speak. Hoppin' Bobs. I don't like using the word cone, right? So as you see here, it says here cone, right? 1742 American English. It was the nickname of the Whig Party. Like the Whig Party is the Republican Party, prior to, right? But used to be the name of the Whig Party. But this is the area that I really want to point to, especially when we get down to here. The now insulting U.S. meaning black person was in use by 1837, said to be from barracoon, right? Which comes from what? The Portuguese barraca. In other words, when you say cone or barracoon, it comes from the word barraca, which means it is a slave depot, a pen or rough enclosure for black slaves in transit in West Africa, Brazil, or Cuba. So this is a barraca. This is what many would, when you say cone, this is what you're making fun of, right? I'm not going to further taint those shade, insult our ancestors. They were already insulted enough. Right. So I don't condone anyone using that word cone. I don't care how bad any of these guys make you upset. And there's plenty of them that I want to call certain names, but I'm going to call Hoppin' Bobs. Right. I'll stick to Hoppin' Bobs, like Stephen A. Smith. He's a Hoppin' Bob. Right. So this is why I don't use the word cone. And I encourage you guys, stop using the word. Use Hoppin' Bob if you have to, but don't use cone. Don't even use Uncle Tom, because that's out of the proper context of who Uncle Tom actually is. But anyway, let's go back to this the Middle Passage. It says the captives were about to embark on the infamous Middle Passage, so called because it was the middle leg of a three-part voyage, a voyage that began and ended in Europe. The first leg of the voyage carried a cargo that often included iron, cloth, brandy, firearms, and gunpowder. See, they're not going to also talk to you about the sex slave that was going on, the sex trade that was going on, the perversions that our ancestors were subjected to. All right. But anyway, upon landing on Africa's slave coast, the cargo was exchanged for Africans. Fully loaded with its human cargo, the ship set sail for the Americas, where the slaves were exchanged for sugar, tobacco, or some other product. The final leg brought the ship back to Europe. The slaves were branded with hot irons. The slaves were branded with the mark of the beast, right? Anyway, the slaves were branded with hot irons and restrained with shackles. And I want to just put up that hot iron. That's the hot iron. This is what they were branded with. Those that are still watching the NFL, which I gave up 4 years ago, right? When I discovered this here, New Orleans Saints, right? This is the same tool that they used to cut the hamstrings of slaves who continued to try to run away, to also cut or castrate. They also will use this here to put a slit down the center of their nose and then put their face over the heat to cause their face to get further deformed. They use this here, what is called the fleur de lis, or the lotus flower, which can point back to the Egyptians, to the Babylonians. But many of our brothers and sisters got to have their NFL, right? Didn't support Kaepernick, didn't support any of that. Don't stand for anything, but fall for everything. And yet trying to tell us to keep it real, right? But anyway. Let me give you a word of encouragement, and then we'll continue. Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 19 and 20. And I encourage you guys, read the entire book of Zephaniah. Study this book. There's so many nuggets here. I love this book because it truly gives a true word of encouragement. Behold, at that time, I will undo all that afflict thee. So the Most High is saying all the people, all these devices, all these countries, around the world that's afflicting our people, he said he's going to undo all that afflict us. And I will save her that halted and gather her that was driven out. So even the Messiah said in Matthew chapter 24, he said after the great tribulation, right? Guess what? He said he's going to dispatch his angels to gather who? His people, Israel. All right. That's what it says. Okay. So it says, and I will save her that halted and gather her that was driven out. And I will get them praise. I will what? Get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. We have been put to shame all around this world. So I want to take a little time. Let me just play a little bit of the shame, right? Let me put it up here real quick. I'm going to play a little bit of it so you guys can understand the shame that we have to deal with as a people. Let me see here. Bear with me 1 second. Let me pull it up here. All right. That's not what I'm looking for. If not, I may have to hold on it, but let me see if I could pull it up here. I want you guys to understand some of the shame that we've been subjected to. All right. I guess I didn't put it up here. I think I removed it. If need be, I will just simply play and I'm not going to play the video. I thought I had the video. I think I took it off. But anyway, I thought I had it, family. Let me try one more time. If not, we'll just table it, that portion for another time. I want to give you a sample of what it is. Here we go. Do I have it here? All right, let's see here. Yeah, I think I accidentally removed it. So I encourage you guys to go back and watch the video that I uploaded a couple of weeks ago. And that video deals with the different songs. It deals with books like Dr. Seuss, children books like Dr. Seuss, and Agatha Christie and some of the blackface that they have engaged in. Like 12 Little Indians really is 12 little Negroes, or niggers rather, not Negroes, niggers. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo is actually dealing with catching slaves, because really it's eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a nigger by the toe, right? Then they changed it, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a Negro by the toe. If you holler, make them pay $20 every day. See, they had those type of songs that they had in place. So yeah, I it's not on this drive, but oh well. I thought I could play it here, but we'll do it another time. But anyway, let's continue on. All right, but it goes on to say this, right? Let me just go ahead and finish reading it. Behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will save her that halteth, and gather her that was driven out, and I will get them praise and fame, right? You know, changing the reputation, because we see fame that still ties into the Hebrew word sham, which means restoring our literal name, but also our reputation. Sham means reputation. It means character, report in every land where they have been put to shame. It goes on to say, and at that time will I bring you again, even the time that I gather you, for I will make you a name, dealing with the reputation, not just the literal name, reputation, the fame, the glory, and a praise among all people of the earth. Not one, not some people. He said all people, including those that have put us in captivity. The Most High is going to use all of them, right, to restore our reputation. That means even those that don't like us, even those that are hating against us, they're going to have to acknowledge that we are the people of the book. The Most High is going to what? Use all of them, whether it's their sons, daughters, whoever. They all going to what? He said, I will make you a name, and a praise among all people of the earth when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith Yahweh. All right, so let's go ahead and deal with this Middle East. And I hope you guys get encouraged off of that. The New York Times, how the Middle East was invented, right? Notice what it says. Until this century, nobody talked about the Middle East because neither the term nor the states and the region existed. Both were the work of the victors in World War I, the true begetters of the furies that still rage. The term Middle East was coined in 1901 by Admiral Alfred Thayer Mahan, the celebrated American advocate of naval power. It was popularized in speeches in 1916 by Sir Mark Sykes, a British member of Parliament, right? So we see that, let me go back here, that the Middle East, right, it was coined in 1901 by Admiral Alfred Thayer Mahan. So again, the Middle East is not something new. So let me play this clip here just to make sure that you guys understand this. Let me play this clip real quick and we will get back into it.
Most Egyptologists and anthropologists, archaeologists of the Eurocentric persuasion will say that Egypt is in Africa. They had to concede that, but then they still draw the line by saying that they weren't Africans like that. In other words, they weren't dark-skinned people. And of course, this is all part of the Great Deception. And the reality is that if they give up Egypt, ancient Kemet, if they give that up and say that that was a part of Black Africa, then they will also have to give up Israel. And that's why they draw the line at Egypt, because if they give up Egypt, they've got to give up Israel.
Now, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you where Israel sits on the African tectonic plate, which means that Israel is northeast Africa. Now, when we look at this map, this is the Sinai. Okay? This is the Red Sea. This is Egypt. This is the Sinai. This is Israel. All right, this is Saudi Arabia over here. Now, if you see this in Hebrew, it says Haluach Afrikani, the African plate. Here it is right here. Israel is sitting right here. Israel is sitting on the Haluach Afrikani, which means that Israel is northeast Africa.
Without question, we are in Northeast Africa. We are landlocked to Egypt, with the exception of the Suez Canal, which was a man-made ditch, a boundary now between, in fact, it's not even really a boundary anymore since Egypt has reclaimed the Sinai Peninsula. But nevertheless, even those of us who are Pan-Africanists in our thinking and Afrocentric, we forget and we leave off that portion of Northeast Africa and don't want to claim anything beyond that.
Europeans classified this area as a Middle East, you know, and then since this the Middle East, the other question, where the Middle West, where the Middle North, and where the Middle South? They don't have no geographical terms like that.
So again, as you see, as you hear with your ears, that the Middle East is nothing new. It's not an old thing. It's a new construct. It's a recent created construct, the Middle East. So again, the term Middle East was coined in 1901 by Admiral Alfred Thayer Mahon. All right. So now let's deal with the modern Jew. Right. Let's deal with this real quick. Let's deal with a little bit more, just a little bit with DNA, just a little bit more with this. How can all of these guys be Jewish? How can they all be Jewish? We got Asians, right? We got our brothers and sisters in Ethiopia. We got German, right? Ashkenazi. How can they all be Jewish? And by the way, when you see these braids here, these two locks, they didn't invent that. That comes from the Yemen Israelites or Jews. All right. They did not create this. But anyway, how can they all be the same? Because under this delusion, right, we know that our community can produce all shades. And I encourage you guys to look up brown in the Oxford Dictionary. You see, we create all colors. We come in all shades. But how is it that this group of people create all of these? And I can say emphatically that's because all of them, guess what? They have different genetic connections. They have what is called genetic distances. And I'm going to explain to you. This is because through a religious system, right? A construct that was created for converts. We have to be truthful about it. The word Jew is we're told by, according to the law of return, that the word Jew, right, is defined as someone born to a Jewish mother or practicing Judaism. Now, we know that appearance is not everything, but family, come on now. You're not going to see this wide range. You're not. You are not going to see this. Okay? So how can they all be Jews and yet they are completely different? Well, I'm going to explain it to you. This is where we start getting into genetic distances. This is another one of those great books that I encourage you guys to purchase, because this book will shut down every argument about the DNA and the different testing and the different ways that many have made, especially when we start dealing with Ashkenazi or the German Jewry. As you see here, the origins of Ashkenazi, in other words, German Jewry, right, by Jit Van Straten, right? This book really shuts it down. It exposes everything that they try to come up with to try to justify what we see today of the Jewish community as we see today. So let's go into here. Let's deal with genetic distances, right? A large part of the study was devoted to the determination of genetic distances between the different populations, and this coming from within the Jewish community. Though this method, genetic markers from different Jewish populations are compared, the smaller the relationship, the more the differences in the DNA may have arisen. Such differences are called distances. Okay. And notice in this test, 75 Caucasians, in other words, whites, populations based on 9 markers, the genetic distance analysis showed that East European Jews were closest to the inhabitants of Thrace, the region shared by Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey. Bulgarian Jews came next, followed by 36 non-Jewish populations, and only then the second Jewish population, the Iranian Jews. Other results showed a large Italian component in the gene pool of the European Jews. From all these results, it appears, notice this, pay attention to this, genetically, the different Jewish communities do not have much in common. Let me say that again. Genetically, right? Notice what it says here. Genetically, the different Jewish communities have nothing in common.
What?
Do I need to say this in slow motion? Let me say it in slow motion. Genetically, the different Jewish communities do not have much in common. For the people in the back. So we have to give the Garbage Can Award for a lot of this poor teaching, this deceptive notion that many think that, hey, you know, you hear this is a new argument. Hey, the Jewish community come in all colors. Let's give a bucket to this. The reason being is through conversion. All right. And as we see here, genetically, the different Jewish communities do not have much in common. Often they appear to be more related to the population in the midst of which they live when its genetic materials was available. So basically saying that each one of these communities, when you're dealing with the Jewish community, you're dealing with converts. We're dealing with converts here. Just this alone, what I just shared with you alone, guess what? They get knocked out off of this. Just this alone. This is what's happening. Just with what I just read to you.
It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over! It's over!
But we're not going to stop there. We got a little bit more time to go. I know it's late night, but it's nothing like learning some good information late night and you can sleep well. Meditate on this thing. Genetically, the different Jewish communities do not have much in common. Often they appear to be more related to the population in the midst of which they lived. And we just dealt with Japheth, family. Man, it's a lot to cover here. Let's go into Ham. As you see, as I mentioned earlier, it's pronounced Ham. Let's go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 6-8. And the sons of Ham, we have Cush, Mizraim, we have Phut, we have Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Ra'amah, and Sabekta, and the sons of Ra'amah, Sheba. But you know, you get the rest of it. But we see verse 8, and Cush begat Nimrod, and he became a mighty one in the earth. But let's go down to verse 20. That's where I really want to get to. These are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. So remember, under the sons of Japheth, we highlighted some key important items there. We saw families there, right? Mashpaka. We see tongues or language, Lashan. and we see what countries or land, which we would see the word Aratazah or Arat, and in their nations, and you'll see Gawayam, and the Israeli pronunciation is Gayim. All right, so we see these same constructs, and remember, we're explaining what heritage is. I hope you grab hold of it so far. We see in this text, we see families, tongues, land or countries, and also nations. So you guys remember this right here, right? And I'm sure you guys have come across this and, talked about this, because we talked about this in our assembly. We weren't using the Zondervan Bible Dictionary to confirm that we're Israelites, but I am going to show you what provoked my thoughts, right? Because when I read the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, right, the Compact Bible Dictionary definition of Ham, you guys, it caught your attention too. The youngest of Noah, the sons of Noah, probably born about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. That stood out for me. It's like, wait a minute, we're not listed under Ham, but if you go and look up Shem, you don't see us mentioned under Shem. That was a red flag to me. But not only do you see that there, you're seeing the Young's Compact Bible Dictionary definition of Ham. This is what it says: a son of Noah and the father of Cush, Egypt, Put, Canaan. And it says, see that's just telling you to see more information on it. But it says here, while they may have all been dark-skinned, right? Now they're making it clear that all of them were dark-skinned, even though on the census form, it has the Egyptians listed under white, right? While they may have all been dark-skinned, they were not the forefathers of the Negroid races. But rather of people associated with Egypt in the north of the continent of Africa. All right, so it says that Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. So, family, are we descendants of Ham? I can say absolutely not. Now, this is not disrespecting anyone that is, but we're not descendants of Ham, right? But where did this teaching originate? Where did this teaching originate? Where did they get it from? The Talmud Mas Barakoth 58b. This is what it says here, right? Look at what some of the things it says about our people here. On seeing pockmarked persons, one says, "Blessed be he who makes strange creatures." An objection was raised. If one see a Negro, a very red or very white person, now we're dealing with a light-skinned or an albino, someone that has no pigmentation, right? A hunchback, a dwarf. Our rabbis taught one seeing an elephant. Notice how they can connect this to being compared to an ape. On seeing an elephant, an ape, or a long-tailed ape, one says, "Blessed is he who makes strange creatures." So we see here, we're dealing with the Negro, right? But then it goes on as being what? Strange creatures. But then it goes on to say, on seeing an elephant, an ape, or a long-tailed ape, one says, "Blessed is he who makes strange creatures." But let's go to the Sanhedrin, right? 108b. Our rabbis taught. Who? Our rabbis taught. Call no one master, right? Call no one what? Rabbis, right? Our rabbis taught. 3 copulated in the ark, and they were all punished: the dog, the raven, and Ham. The dog was doomed to be tied. The raven expectorates, and this is gross, right? And Ham was smitten in the skin. So the Talmud Sanhedrin 108b is saying that Ham was on the ark indulging in bestiality. Saying he copulated with animals here. Should we be surprised? Because I showed a video of a rabbi teaching that Adam had intercourse with animals in his search for Eve. But notice what it says, and Ham was smitten in the skin. In other words, he was punished. And it gives you the footnote, and this is the footnote right here. An example, from him descended Cush, the Negro, who is black-skinned. And I said this before, and I'm going to show you the clip again, that in Israel right now, the word Cush or Cushi, which means black, and it's used as the N-bomb, the N-word, over in Israel right now. Let me play it real quick. Let me see if I still have it up here. Here it is. Let me play it real quick.
להתחיל לאסוף את המסתננים, לא צריך לחכות לבג"ץ, לא צריך שום דבר. אני רואה חרא מחוץ לבית שלי, יריקות, פסיכופטים, אנשים שרק מחפשים איך לרצוח אותי בעיניים שלהם, אבל אף אחד לא מאמין לנו. אנחנו גזענים כדי לרצות לשמור על החיים שלנו ועל השפיות שלנו. אז אני גאה בלהיות גזענית. אם אני גזענית בשביל לשמור על החיים שלי, אז אני גאה.
אל תפקושי לנסוע! אל תנסוע עם פושי! לכי את והוא! תלכי מפה! תלכי! אל תנסוע עם פושי! לכי! לא מתביישת!
Yeah, family, that's happening right in Israel. So the word Cushi is the N word over there. And you saw them making it clear in that video that they're proud to be racist. They're proud to be racist. But anyway, we see inside the Talmud that teaching of Ham or Ham being cursed to have black skin or dark skin because of copulating with animals on the ark. And says that from him descended Cush, the Negro, who is black skinned. Right? But let's get into Shem, right? Let's deal with Shem or Sham. Let's go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 21. Unto Shem also the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even unto him were children born. But we want to skip down to verse 31. And it says, these are the sons of Shem after their families. Notice these constructs again. Notice these key items. Their families, Mashpachah, after their tongues, Lashan, and their lands, Arat Tazah, or Arat, in Israeli language, Eretz. After their nations, Gawayam, right? And these, it says, these are the families of the sons of Noah, after their what? Generations and their nations. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. But we still see these key items: family, tongues, lands, and nations. So let's go to Princeton University because there's some things that we're going to address here. This is the map of Africa, ancient map of Africa from 1710. And you guys notice this here, Negro land, right? You guys notice this, right? I got to change this into an arrow. You guys probably recognize this Mickey Mouse hand, right? Got to change that to the arrow, but Negro land, and that's a whole nother discussion, right? We see here Guinea, we're highlighting Guinea, right? We see the slave coast. We see Ouida or Fida, right? We see Ouida, which is what transliterates also to Judah, right? But we could see some other names here that we could go off of too. All right, but anyway. But I want to highlight this writing here real quick because this really caught my attention when I first studied these maps, right? So when we highlight this writing, and it's written in Old English, it says, I am credibly informed that a country, when you see YA, right, this is Old English, country about 100 leagues north of the Guinea coast is inhabited by white men, or at least a different kind of people from the blacks, who wear clothes and have a use of letters, make silk, and that some of them keep the Christian Shabbat. So it's a couple of things that really stood out to me here, where they said they discovered a group, an area inhabited by white men. And understand, right? Believe it or not, you have people that come to this country, right, that are Arabs and, come from India as well. And they are referred to as Caucasians. So you do have black Caucasians. That's a fact. That's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, so we see here inhabited by white men, or at least a different kind of people from the blacks, who wear clothes, that stood out, and have a use of letters, that stood out, make silk, and that some of them keep the Christian Shabbat. That was kind of odd, but that stood out. So did the Portuguese discover a different kind of white man or a different kind of people who actually wore clothes and can write? Why would the Portuguese be surprised at finding a civilized group of white men or whatever, right? But anyway, let's answer this question. Let's actually use a source to see the group of people that they were actually dealing with, right? This is coming from Africa and Its Inhabitants, Volume 2 by Elise Recluse. Page 173. Saracens, in other words, Sonic people. I just added the Sonic people here because that's what Saracens are. They are the Sonic people. It says the Jews of West Africa, but unlike them, are chiefly wholesale dealers carrying on a large caravan between Sierra Leone and Timbuktu. And this is them. Looks just like us, right? This is our people. Looks just like this is our people. Okay. Let's go to page 207. East of Great Popo begins the Dahomey territory, guarded by the important town of Glewe, known to Europeans by the various names of Fida, Heveda, Wida, or Wida, or Wida. The old writers called it Judah, and its inhabitants were said to be Jews, while the neighboring river Alala, whose real name is Ephra, became the Euphrates. All right, on page 410. Now, this is key. A part of the local trade is in the hands of the Mavumbas, and it says a people of grave and solemn aspect with intelligent eyes. In other words, saying that the eyes are shaped differently. They have straight or even aquiline noses. Their nose is not as wide, right? Thinner noses and so forth. Whose pronounced Semitic type has earned for them the Portuguese designation of Judeos Praeton. In other words, black Jews. They may have certainly be regarded as of Jewish origin. If the statement be true that they are strict observers of the Sabbath, they're not talking about the Christian Sabbath. And this is why I said that they were not enemies or danger to Christendom, because they are practicing, I don't like to say Judaism, but they're practicing Torah. But they still attacked them anyway, still enslaved them anyway. That's why I said that they wasn't Saracens. They were not practicing Islam. If the statement be true that they are strict observers of the Sabbath, abstaining even from all conversation on that day, right? Now they honoring the Shabbat, and they not even entertaining conversations on that day, period. Right? So here's another article I want to highlight, and we can wrap this up, right? I want to highlight this article here. Times of Israel, Messianic Jews to Nigerians. You're not real Jews, right? This was published back in August the 11th, 2017. Now, notice what they say here. Messianic Jews to Nigerians. You're not real Jews. You're not real Jews, right? And you remember the video that I uploaded of Elder Remy showing how the Igbos were confirmed. But you have this Messianic Jewish group who, matter of fact, let me just read it real quick So you can, and then I can explain. It says, in a move that has garnered condemnation and anger from Nigerian Jews and international scholars, Jewish Voice Ministries, that's the name of this group, this Messianic group in Arizona, this group from Arizona, Jewish Voice Ministries, a Messianic group of Arizona, from Arizona, announced this week that the Igbos are not genetically Jewish based on what? Their own private DNA testing. Wait a minute. So they have enough money to come up with their own private, not revealing what the test is and what it entails, but they came up with their own private DNA testing. This group of Messianic Jews, per se, from Arizona, right? Jewish based, right, on their own private, says, let me read this part again. Announced this week that the Igbos are not genetically Jewish based on their private DNA testing, right? The Jewish Messiah is regarded by Israel and Jewish organizations as a form of Christianity. But notice what it says here. Jewish Voice Ministry said that they traveled to Nigeria to invest claims that the Igbo are people are descendants of ancient Israelites. Some Igbos believe that the term Igbo is a bastardized version of the word Hebrew. Right? These people, right? These people, this group of Messianic Jews out in Arizona, go figure, right? Out in Arizona. Okay, that's a whole nother discussion that in itself. They're out in Arizona, creates their own DNA, came up with their own DNA testing, and they came up with their own conclusion. Right? But let me knock that down here. Right? Let's start with going to the Jewish Almanac, right? Page 494. You guys know who this person is. This is Henry Alfred Kissinger, who is the former U.S. Secretary of State under President Nixon. So this guy is Jewish. This guy is Jewish, right? He's a Jew. But let's see what he wrote about the Igbos, even before this confirmation came out. This is what he said about the Igbos back in 1969. You're talking almost 50 years ago. This is a memorandum, right? That you can go still to the government website, which is, as you see here at the bottom of your screen. Matter of fact, I'm going to drop this inside the chat. Let me drop it inside the chat. So that way you guys can have it there. All right. We are making good ground. So after we cover this, we're going to go into another key area, and then we're going to wrap it up because I am getting tired here. All right. And I got a lot to do tomorrow. And this, I'm covering a lot of information. I may even have to break this up into two pieces to get it all in. But let me get this here. All right. All right. Come on, mouse. Where's my mouse? All right. Let's see here. If it works, I'll put it in there. If not, I'll put it inside the description. All right, family. Let me see here. No, it's not letting me get into it. My mouse is acting up. All right, let's try it one more time. Okay, here we go. It's letting me do it now. Here we go. All right, I'll put it inside the chat so there you have it. And we're going to wrap this up here because I am getting tired and I got to get up early in the morning. All right, here we go. The Igbos are the wandering Jews of West Africa. Gifted, aggressive, westernized. At best envied and resented, but mostly despised by the mass of their neighborhood, or their neighbors in the Federation. But again, the Igbos are the wandering Jews of West Africa. Didn't say they may be. They didn't say that they are like, right? Henry Kissinger, Secretary of State. That is the third most powerful position in the country. And they are privy to information, even those that have clearances. When you are in that position, you have the highest clearance that you can have, pretty much. and you are privy to information that the even those that have TS and clearances and having additional special clearances to go along with it is higher than that. So Henry Kissinger, who is a Jew, says and made a note, it's government record, that the Igbos are the wandering Jews of West Africa, gifted, aggressive, westernized, at best envied and resented. But yet these guys trying to come up with their own private DNA testing to come up with their foolishness. Now, this right here, I added this into here. So this wasn't part of the original document, but I just want to cover this again. You guys going to hear me cover this article a lot as we wrap it up, right? Since they want to, this same group, and I'm pretty confident that they fall right up under the Ashkenazi Jews. Notice what it says here. Ashkenazi Jews often find themselves in a peculiar situation of being 90% Ashkenazi, Jewish, and 99% European, right? So saying that the Ashkenazi Jews are Europeans. And this is the Forward, which is a Jewish publication from the 1870s or whatever. It's a Jewish publication. They are making it clear that the Ashkenazi Jewish community are 99% Europeans. And within that 99%, they are 90% Ashkenazi Jewish. So it goes on to say Sephardic Jews may be told they are mostly Middle Eastern or North Africa. So it's like the opposite. But it says that their DNA points them to North Africa or Northeast Africa, which is referred to the new Middle East of today. And less than 10% Ashkenazic, less than 10%. And I'll make reference to this particular Jewish blogger who did his DNA with 23andMe. But it goes on to say this, right? Schaufman, who learned that he is 99.8% Ashkenazic Jewish. So basically, almost 100% European. Said the test hasn't made much of a difference on his sense of Jewish identity. Judaism really informed who I am. He's saying his religion, right? What he practices tells him who he is, even though he has no DNA connection to the ancient Israelites. He has no connection to the Middle East or the Northeast Africa. He has no connection, but he still had the privilege to refer to himself as being connected to that territory. But notice what he says is, say here, 23andMe hasn't made me more or less Jewy at all. I'm just Jewy. However, Schaufman added, he's Jewy and white, while other Jews, and he's referring to the Sephardic Jews, the Ethiopian Jews, can't claim that distinction. He is an ethnic minority, but a white one nonetheless. I get all the benefits of white privilege, he acknowledged. He's making it clear. He knows that he's basically almost 100% white, right? Caucasian, white. But he's making it clear he still get the benefits of white privilege. So there's no connection to the Northeast Africa, to the ancient Israelites. No connection. None. Right? Exodus chapter 1-7, a key point to understand. Right? Matter of fact, you know what? We're going to pause right here. I think this is a good time to pause. I shared a lot of information and I am getting tired. Right? So family, I hope this helps you guys. I gave you a lot of information and I gave you a lot to start off. We'll break this up into 2 parts. We may even continue this tomorrow. We may continue part 2 next week, but it's just too much to cover. I'll be up another hour. I mean, it's pretty detailed, this presentation, and we'll continue on defining heritage, and we're still dealing with Japheth. But I really appreciate you guys for taking the time out tonight to tune into this lesson. I gave you a lot of information to help you articulate this information to your loved ones, to your family, your friends, or if you still part of Christianity and attend the church, you could bring these discussions up. But you have proof, you have evidence, you have things that cannot be contested. You have information that supports you, right? So that it doesn't sound like you're just making things up. And if they choose not to receive you, guess what? As the Messiah said, brush the dust off and take your peace with you. So with that being said, family, I want to say this. Feel free to reach out to me offline. I'm going to do one more Hebrew class on tomorrow. I'll do one more here, the first lesson of the Hebrew class tomorrow here online. And then from there, I'll be doing all my posts and uploads for us, the Hebrew lessons over under the Patreon account. I'm going to start uploading information there. I just created me a Patreon account about a week and a half ago. Feel free to connect to that channel. And a lot of key information I'm going to start putting over there. So things that you'll see here doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be over there. I get to go into more depth and detail without dealing with the censorship that is going on this channel here. So with that being said, family, in the words of Moses, right, the words that he had to express to the children of Israel as they were dealing with the obstacle in front of them. They came out of Egypt. They were led out of Egypt by the Most High, but then they came up against an obstacle, the water before them. And the Egyptians saw that it was an opportunity for them to take advantage of them, right? And so in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, Moses was instructed to encourage Israel with these words: fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, you will never have to deal with them ever again. The Most High will fight for you, but you have to hold your peace. Can't go back, can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.